these boxes, and here's where they come up with, oh, we call it our need, you know, and put it in English letters, no one knows what it means. So they, you know, that's what so they're really good with all of this. And so here they are.
Are we on now,
Josh
Wendy?
is right, so they're using it in,
Everybody is ready
Center
to
Work.
begin. I expect
They're trying.
Mr. Redfern to be here, but I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, if that is all right with everyone.
well, we saw him earlier, so.
Yes,
Today.
I believe that he will be here this evening, but I think that it is right now 5:31, so I would like to call this special board meeting of the Santa Ynez Community Service District to order, November 13th, 2019 at 5:31 p.m. So, with that, Wendy, would you like to do roll call?
Yeah. Director Beard,
Here.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Muller,
Here.
Director D'Ambra,
Here.
Director Redford.
Okay. This special meeting was called to order. This was on our last agenda, and the board asked staff to discuss this as a standalone item and to give us more time, because this is policies that go back probably 3 decades, perhaps. And there is a lot of good stuff in here, and our legal counsel, Mr. Battles, has updated it. He made recommendations several years ago, and they had not been acted on. And we do want to act on this, including implementing our new policy regarding transparency. So what I would like to do is to consider this, but I would like to go through the manual, and in reading it myself, and I have read it before the last meeting and twice before this meeting, I still have questions, still have things I don't know that I'm prepared to vote on to amend the whole thing tonight, but we'll see where we get. Let's try to make some progress going through this. So with that, oh, before I do that, excuse me, are there any public comments? I apologize, I forgot to ask for that. Familiar face in the audience. So there are no public comments, so with that, I just described what we're doing here this evening. So we're going to go ahead and start. We've all seen the staff report, but I will defer now to Mr. Battles. Is there anything you would like to add before we start going through the different changes?
I was going to mention a comment or two that I didn't make last time. Last time I shared some comments before you jumped into it, and something that an additional comment to make was one thing that you could address that I don't think is addressed in here is having policies relating to the timing for providing documents to the board. That's been an issue in the past, and we haven't had a policy on that. So a letter comes in or a letter goes out by the district, how soon do the board members want to see it? Do they want to wait until the next board meeting? Do they want to receive a copy by email within 24 hours? You know, that kind of thing. So you can have a policy on that, something to consider. I think that's the only new comment.
And on
last
that,
time.
would you consider that being included in the transparency policy, a standalone policy, or under a specific section here?
It's always a judgment call as to where you want to put a particular policy like that. I think it would fit under the board policy manual. It would be a responsibility of staff, I guess, and so it could go in an employee document, but we don't have really a document that's suitable for that, I don't think. So I think this would be a good place to put it.
I know how I personally feel. I can't speak for the other people at this table, but in this day of everything being pretty instant, it's like we live in a emergency kind of situation where we immediately get phone calls, immediately get noticed of everything. I would like to know when other people know things. I like to know things at the same time as my colleagues. So much is communicated electronically now. That's a very easy thing. I think most of us get electronic messages.
You know, that's a great idea, but I think you need to fine tune that, defining what is prevalent, what's an issue immediately as opposed to something that's not real important, because after a while, we all start deleting things, and it loses its value, as opposed to when we see something there, I think we'll pay more attention if we know that it's a minimal level of importance. I just think that would,
Yeah, I mean, if it's time sensitive, I think we could do
Yeah.
it by email, but, if not, we could deal with it at the next board meeting.
Yeah, and that could be the test, that it's time sensitive. It relates to
Yeah.
something that's gonna come up before the next board meeting. If it's a notice that comes to the district for a hearing or a meeting or something that occurs before the next board meeting, it doesn't do you any good to hear about it after the fact. So just it being time sensitive could be the test.
That was the complaint, or one of them that leads to this discussion, is a meeting was held and we didn't know about it until our next board meeting. And it was good that the meeting was held, but it would have been nice to know, on the 12th, they're meeting about blah, blah drive. And it came up with me, it's an example that Mr. Battles and I have referred to, that on copying, when somebody is CC'd, I was at another meeting and it showed that I had been CC'd on some communication, and it bothered me that, no, I never received this letter. Oh, well, you'll be getting it at the next meeting. So I think that is a good test. Yes.
how urgent is the request, the information that comes out? How urgent is that? Because although we paint the picture here, yeah, we'd like it like this and like that, there's gonna be something that comes in that didn't meet the qualifications, I think. And we're gonna say, we should have been apprised to that. So I guess we would have to leave that to Wendy's best discretion and what she feels is pretty urgent as opposed to something that's doesn't meet the basic criteria to punch us in on the emails.
Yeah, so we could have a clear standard that says the directors get a copy within 24 hours if it's time sensitive, and time sensitive would mean it relates to a matter that's coming up or action is going to be taken on it before your next board meeting. So that'd be one standard. And in addition, board members receive other copies of other communications if they're not routine and appear to be of an urgent nature as determined within the discretion of staff or something like that. That would be an approach.
I agree with what you're saying. I just think that as a person in the district, if the entire district is being notified, then we would obviously be part of that. Or if a segment of the district is being notified, like if we're going to notify everyone that lives west of here of something, then,
Yes,
I mean, that would be us.
Well, some of it might not have to do with other people being notified outside the board. It might be something that just the board needs to be notified about.
Right. I can think of a specific example where that happened also, where I felt like something was received several days before a meeting, but I didn't know about it until the meeting. I would have liked to have known sooner than the meeting. I felt like it was information that would have helped me prepare for the meeting. So, hi. Good to see you. Director Redford. So we just started this and we're going through this, but before we get into all of this, revising our board policy manual, we're talking about one thing that Mr. Battles didn't put in had to do with when the board is notified of matters. So whether we have a time-sensitive test or whether it is just something we will get the correspondence at the next meeting, we were trying to determine a standard for that. But it proves my point. There's a lot of rules in here, and to go through all of them is something.
I actually did have one other comment. At the last board meeting, we talked about Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and I think the comment was made, we already did adopt that, and I wasn't able to remember that we had done that. And staff looked, and I looked, and I can't find that we did formally adopt those rules, so that's still something that we can do.
This was handed out at a meeting to the board of directors, and I believe it was President Higgins at the time, but it could have been Mr. Seymour, said this is what we are going to go by.
Okay,
So maybe it could have been a consensus thing.
I see.
But I definitely got a copy of this, and it was when I got a copy of this, and it was when I was being house trained.
Okay.
So
There was never an agenda item that specifically related to the Rosenberg Rules of Order, so, there was never a motion or anything.
Sorry.
And nothing's in the minutes.
All right, let me turn this off. I thought I had my phone off.
So no formal action has been taken. If you
No.
want to be bound by those orders, by those rules, it would be a good idea to take formal action adopting them. And that could be done as part of the adoption of this policy, or it could be done separately.
Okay, I would like to open it up to some comments. Does everybody think that they have a full understanding of what's in this policy and what the changes are?
Yeah, I did have some question, or a question. I know that, on page 6, I guess it is, on the top paragraph, it says the general manager conducts conferences and takes testimonies or written documentation on resolutions of the complaint. And then it says the written decision. That means he writes up the decision that he makes to handle the accident report or whatever. Or I couldn't, I had a little problem trying to figure out.
Okay, so let's say somebody complains that the district damages their property.
Right.
Or that the district has been overcharged, or that the district has overcharged them, or something like that. Less than trash in their yard, and files a complaint, they'd come talk to the manager first, and the manager would attempt to resolve it. And at the end of that, if the person says, well, can you put that in writing, then the general manager would send him an email or a letter saying, this will confirm my decision that the district is not responsible, or that the district will pay you $50, or that the district will reconnect your line, or something like that. So if requested, the general manager would provide written documentation regarding the decision that he makes. And in that way, the person filing the complaint would have something to appeal to the board, something in writing to appeal to the board, rather than just a vague statement regarding what they thought the general manager's decision was. So this was just an effort to take what was in here and turn it into a formal process for dealing with complaints, which I think works pretty well.
We have had one complaint, I was prior to you being sworn in last month, but since the 2 new members are here, we had a complaint from a property owner of being overcharged, and he came to a meeting, and the complaint resolved itself. It seems like he did not have a complete picture of what was going on, and he withdrew his complaint. So as it stands now, is there a written record of that complaint and how it was resolved other than in our minutes? Or does that count as resolution?
I think it's, as you described it, my recollection is that once he understood the facts a little better and understood what the charges were going to be going forward, he was satisfied. And so that was the district didn't make a decision to grant his request. Instead, the district kind of stood by its guns, and he understood what the requirements were, and that was enough to resolve the matter. So the district didn't follow up with something in writing. This will confirm that at our meeting on such and such a date, we considered your complaint, and this is the action we took. You know, thank you for bringing this to the attention of the district. We didn't have anything like that. We just have the minutes.
And the minutes do serve as documentation.
Yeah.
It's the point of keeping minutes. But I'm just for clarification here, did that gentleman come into the office and make a complaint? And was he, then said, well, if you have a complaint, you should go to the board. I mean, just as we're formalizing this process, because reading through these rules, it makes great sense to me that things that can be handled at a staff level should be handled at a staff level. And so was this person unhappy at the staff
Well,
level?
you bring up more of a bifurcated type of issue with that one, because it was really his property manager that contacted us with the problem of it. The individual that you saw before you, he didn't come until the end of the documentation in the process. It was the property manager that we communicate back and forth with to explain, here's why you're charged this, and when you were charged this, and here's our written rules and regulations. So, and I mean that it's bifurcated like that, it adds another one to this. In some districts and jurisdictions I've worked for, we're very clear back to alleviating a problem like that. Sorry, we'll only communicate with the actual property owner. We don't have a policy such as that. So back to that one, we were communicating with the property manager, and then that was the first time we ever talked to the actual property owner was at the board meeting. So we
Okay.
tried to resolve it with the property manager, because we don't have a clear, back to, who do we talk to? Do we only talk to the actual owner, or in that case, it was the representative? I don't know if she ever even really, because we actually tried to get that from her too, that, well, do you speak for the property owner?
And she did send him, an email, and he turned around and authorized her to speak with us. So we have that in writing. But it wasn't necessarily a complaint. They wanted a refund because they thought they were being overcharged. So we can't give refunds based on,
policy.
prior charges that were never like talked about or brought up before, so it's kinda like going backwards. When they, when she asked about the use, we changed it for the next coming year, so when they got their tax bill, so like this tax bill, that new change was already set in play, because that was for the coming charges, not past charges.
I understand that, I'm not trying to relive the details, I'm trying to clarify the need for a policy where things are resolved at a staff level. If it is not resolved at a staff level, then it becomes part of, this process, and that's why we're updating this manual. So we do have policies in place, just like we relied on the government code to do what was right and legal there. But it's an example of where complaints come to us. It's nice if we have a very clear policy of how we act when those complaints come, and to try and resolve them at staff level. Am I?
You're correct, I mean, we attempted to back to, here's the governing policy that we have. Back to, here's how we handle fees and rates and stuff.
I'm trying to help get a policy here that we can refer to, not explain how. I don't think anything went wrong with that. I think it resolved in the proper fashion and legally. But right now, I'm concerned with the policy and trying to get consensus and clarity on what Director Redford pointed out.
I thought actually the rest of it read really well. I understood it, and it was pretty cut and dry, and I think that's the way it should be. I just had that one question about that line in particular. I just didn't know what it meant, and
So that, again, that line is.
Sure.
is-
now I understand.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And I do think that the example that you point to more or less followed this policy. It started at the staff level, and it got kicked up to the board. This just formalizes that process.
And does it formalize, just making sure, because when I read things, there's just like a lot of rules and it's hard to wrap my head around it. So the complaint may be filed with the general manager within a reasonable time, blah, blah, blah. We did all that. So
But it
he would,
actually-
oh, no, that's okay.
It actually starts with Wendy, the secretary. It's filed with her first, and then it goes to the general manager if she can't solve it.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's the way I read it anyways.
Correct.
Yes, and if it's going to come to the board, then there should be some kind of documentation so we can then give them something to appeal.
Yeah, they have to file a written complaint within 10 days after the general manager makes a decision.
So go ahead, Bob.
I feel the board should be apprised of all of that, and it should be reference material for us that this transpired. May not be important to you, but be extremely important to him. I think it's incumbent on us that we're informed, even at the lowest level, when we have public input coming into the office, complimenting a job or criticizing a job. I think it should be on paper that we're apprised on this date, such and such transpired, FYI. I want to be apprised of that.
I agree, and the documentation to me is the more important thing. When I worked in a hospital setting, we documented everything, and most of it wasn't important. They brushed their teeth. It only becomes important where you go back to the record, and anybody that works financial, whatever kind of records you keep, instead of, well, no, they said this, and so I told them that. So if somebody comes in, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think having documentation of it, we don't have to go through every every request all the time at every meeting, but when something transpires, it's nice to have a record.
We can include a statement in here that says whenever a complaint is filed with the manager, he should report on the complaint and provide appropriate documentation to the board at its next meeting.
But does that, if they have 10 days to respond to the complaint,
Right.
then how long do we have to respond to their complaint?
It would be at a board meeting, which is, let's see.
Would
the
that be
Board
2
may
months
consider the
then?
matter at the next regular board meeting or call a special meeting to consider the matter, and then the board will expeditiously resolve the matter. So that's when it comes to you. So you may have situations where staff deals with the complaint and resolves it, and it never comes to you on an appeal. But in that situation, to respond to Bob's comment, we could include a requirement that says the general manager will report to the board on those matters at the next board meeting. It can be under the general manager's report. And I think that would address the concern there. If it comes to you as an appeal, you're gonna find out about it anyway. And at that point, there'd be a staff report with all of the backup and so on.
Yeah.
No, and I think we're all agreeing, it's just a matter of how to put it in a way where it's a clear policy. And I know that it's not, you know, we had things called incident reports we used to have to do when there was an incident. And it was bigger than a, they brushed their teeth today thing, but not a big deal. We kept a record. And then anybody that was interested.
Getting back to the main point, I would like to have a net at some point where somebody comes in and makes an issue, a financial problem. Typically, everything's gonna be financial. We deal with whether you, no matter how you paint it. Of a monetary number that we should be apprised of.
So if a complaint, you would only want to be,
Immediately.
you'd only want to be, before the next board meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
he may make a settlement with somebody and we would have looked at it and said, gee, that was a great job, or, oh my God, we should never have done that. And that's already been transpired, that issue. My point is, I would like for us to have a fail-safe, if you will, that at X amount of dollars, if there's some kind of a compensation due or settlement, because all this else is going to be compensation, we should be, as a board, have a minimum. He should have as the general manager, a limit.
Yeah,
of
and
what-
you do,
There
don't you?
is.
Don't you have I thought you had a stated limit on your spending authority without board approval?
What page?
Do you know what that is?
Well,
Okay.
that can't be
It could be the same.
Okay, see, I can't accept that. His spending limit is for daily management, not to deal with a legal matter.
Well, you bring up a really interesting one, because we have one that's come to our attention. What's the property of the French drain?
Van Best.
On page 8, he just brought up, the claim is, if the claim is in excess of $500, it should be forwarded to the board.
Will be forwarded to the
It should be
board.
forwarded to the district, insurance. But should it be then forwarded to the board, and just, if it's gonna be sent over to the insurance, we should be notified.
And it shall be, and that's exactly the sort of thing I was talking about on being CC'd. If you are notifying insurance of something
A
and.
claim.
Yeah, then maybe that's something that we would want to be copied on as people that are doing the oversight. I don't know.
Yes, I would definitely want to know we filed a claim with the insurance.
Yeah, this is
That's what
under
the board
claims.
is. Ultimately, we're paying it.
Right.
We should be apprised of it. And if we're not doing what we're elected to do, and that's represent the people, I don't want to be derelict. I don't want to be not knowing about something that transpired.
This would be a notification prior.
Prior to, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd add that, we'd have categories to get notified of, and it's the things we a couple of minutes ago. If there's an urgency, if it's time sensitive, or whatever, or if it's a claim that's reported to the insurance company, or a complaint by the member of the public, which exceeds X dollars.
Yeah, that way then we are all responsible individually for having the knowledge of that situation at hand.
Boy, that is so close to community outreach, but that really is board notification stuff.
Yeah, it's rather than outreach to the community, it's
Yes.
outreach to the board. And should the threshold for a claim be dollars? That's a pretty low number.
It is a low number.
What's that, 1,000, 500? I would guess it's 1,000.
No, I think it's more like 5,000 or so.
I think so.
Let's just, 1,000. I'll throw out 1,000. We have an issue with a client. I'd want to know if it was more than 1,000, my personal view.
A problem,
But that, the insurance is different, so with the problem, forward,
$500
or more.
or that's,
because we're gonna have to pay it anyway.
go ahead and dollar claim.
Limit.
It's a 500 claims in excess.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the deductible,
Before you're deducting another $1,000, before 5,000 and be.
With. Through this, through, when I read,
yeah,
as I read.
and
Okay, so if we're starting on page pose or wording things like that, I did not have a pose on page 22, and okay, so this,
oh, I see, that is not numbered.
within this, are and state levels.
And it just involving, but you know, that are outside. So it was, I think you should.
Well, good, because I'm opting, and I'm looking at the code. There's quite a bit of red here. Instead of maintain a manual,
Correct.
you wanted to give us is to be conducted with ordinances or legislation. So a lot of red here, so I think
Involve advance, it doesn't have to follow the policy, amend it that way, allowing the, I'll use that term, and